Welcome to the video solutions for the NCFE Functional Skills English Level 2 Writing Sample Paper 4. In this video, we will go through the questions and you can get a better idea of what you want your answers to look like, as well as what to look out for when planning your answers. Before we look at the tasks, let's have a look at the mark scheme to see what you'll be assessed on during your writing exam. So you'll need to present information and ideas concisely, logically and persuasively. What does this mean? Well, information refers to facts. So you'll need to include certain facts in your answer. And ideas means your own ideas and opinions. You will need to present these concisely, which means that you're not repeating things and everything is written in a short and easy to understand manner. You'll need to present logically, which means that everything should be in a logical order and everything should flow on from each other. So each sentence flows on from the next. And persuasively, which means that you're trying to convince the examiner that your opinion is valid. You need to present information on complex subjects clearly and concisely. So this essentially means that your writing will have to be crystal clear and easy for anyone to understand. We've got that word concisely again, which simply means that we shouldn't be repeating things and we should try to make sure that everything is written in a simple way. Use a range of writing styles for different purposes. This means that we need to adapt our answers according to the audience and purpose that have been specified in the question. So, for example, if you're writing for a professional audience, you're going to be using a formal style. We'll see this in action in the answers. And finally, we need to use a range of sentence structures, including complex sentences and paragraphs, to organise written communication effectively. This means that we need to be using both short and longer sentences. So standalone sentences and sentences that connect different ideas together within them using connectives or commas. We also need to make sure that we're using paragraphs in our answers. Remember that each paragraph you use should address a different issue or topic. Altogether, these form the composition of your answer. And the composition makes up 55 to 60% of your marks overall. So you need to make sure that your answers are clear and your writing is appropriate. The next part of the mark scheme focuses on punctuation, spelling and grammar. So we are asked to punctuate written text using commas, apostrophes and inverted commas accurately. So you need to make sure that as well as including capital letters and full stops at the start and end of sentences, you're using commas in your answers. You may also need to use apostrophes and inverted commas. So that means quote marks. We need to ensure that written work is fit for purpose and audience with accurate spelling and grammar that support clear meaning in a range of text types. This means that your writing will need to make sense no matter what the purpose and audience is. Your spelling will also have to be accurate throughout your answers in order to achieve high marks. The weighting for this is 40 to 45% and 45% of your exam overall. So make sure that your spelling, punctuation and grammar are well revised so that you'll be prepared in the exam. So now let's take a look at the first question. Activity 1, write an article. You see the opportunity to be published in a national newspaper that is running a competition in conjunction with Visit Britain. You decide to enter the competition. Write a persuasive article to promote a British city, town, village or area for the competition. Remember to think about how you should set out your submission. One document has been provided. This document contains useful content for the activity. You may choose to select and use any of the material for your writing. You may also use your own ideas to complete this activity, and you can use the space to plan your article. So what do we need to identify from this question? Well, to start with, we need to know what the text type we've been asked to write is, and we've been asked to write an article. So we have to think carefully about how we are going to organise the content. So we've been told that we need to think about how we should set out our submission, which means we're going to be using organisational features like headings and subheadings and perhaps an author's name as well for an article. Next, we need to identify the audience and the purpose. So the audience will be, it's been written for a national newspaper, so it's a general audience of people in Britain. So we'll need to adapt to that audience. We also need to consider the purpose. So what are we doing? Well, we're writing a persuasive article to promote a town, city, village or area. So we want to be persuading the readers that this is a fantastic place to be. We are using persuasive techniques and devices in our answer. So think about what persuasive techniques you could use. We can also use the document to answer the question, as well as our own ideas. So you don't necessarily have to use the document provided, but it will help you to come up with ideas when you are planning. So this is the document we've got here, and it's from Visit Britain, and it says, win £50 and be published in a national newspaper. To enter, write an article promoting a British place of your choice, and then send entries to this email address to arrive by the 5th of March, and then results announced on the 12th of March. So what important information can we get from here? Well, we've got some examples of places in this diagram here. So we could talk about any of these cities, for example, London or York or Leeds. So choose a place and write an article. Let's take a look at a sample answer to this question. Ottery St Mary, small town, big character. Why Ottery? Ottery St Mary is a small market town in East Devon. There is no town more deserving than this one to be published in a national newspaper due to its landscape, culture and rich history. A site of great natural beauty. Ottery is in a lush green valley 10 minutes away from the sea, offering residents and visitors the amazing opportunity to experience a huge range of natural beauty. In fact, it is within the official area of outstanding natural beauty, a rare thing in a country with a rapidly sprawling urban landscape. In addition, the world-famous Dartmoor is only a stone's throw away, a place of historical interest. Furthermore, the history of Ottery is rich and long. It is the only town in the world to partake in the tradition of tar barrels, as well as the ever-popular Pixie Day in summer. Young families, elderly people, professionals and tourists come from far and wide to enjoy these events, and they are not to be missed. Finally, Ottery holds a fascinating culture, home to Coleridge, the renowned romantic poet who was greatly inspired by the beautiful landscapes and culture of Ottery. Why not follow in his footsteps and give it a visit? So now let's consider each of the marking criteria to work out what makes this a good answer. We'll start by looking at the punctuation. So in each sentence we've got a capital letter at the start and we've got a full stop at the end. So make sure that you're using capital letters and full stops to mark out your sentences and make it easy for the reader to understand. You'll also need to be using capital letters for proper nouns in your answer. So that includes place names like Ottery St Mary and East Devon, and it also includes sort of people's names like Coleridge there. And we've got some capitalisation on important events. So we've got the historical period, the romantic period, we've got Pixie Day and the tar barrels. So these are important events that have been capitalised. So make sure that you're using capital letters correctly in your answers. You'll also need to use commas. Now these can be used to add further detail to sentences, or they can be used to create lists. So, for example, we've got commas used here to create a short list, to create a rule of 3 here. So we've got landscape, culture and rich history. So because we've got a list of more than two things, we can't just use an and, we've got to use a comma here. So whenever you're listing something, everything in the list should have a comma between it until you get right to the end and add an and. You can also use commas to separate out different ideas within clauses. So for example, we've got Ottery is in a lush green valley, and then we would take a breath before adding extra information to this sentence. So it's not just a lush green valley, it's also 10 minutes away from the sea, and that's another idea, another clause, so then we have a comma there too, offering residents and visitors the amazing opportunity to experience a huge range of natural beauty. So can you see how commas have been used to break up the different parts of that sentence and give the reader a little bit of breathing room? We've also got question marks that have been used. So we've got why Ottery? And this has been used to ask a question at the start of the article and encourage the reader to be interested in the topic. We've also got the persuasive use of a rhetorical question at the end. So why not follow in his footsteps and give it a visit? This is encouraging the reader to come and visit Ottery St Mary. We've got exclamation marks that have been used as well to make the location seem more exciting. So we've got an exclamation mark used right in the start at the title to draw the reader in and get them excited about Ottery St Mary. And then we have exclamation marks used in the main body of the answer as well. So you can add exclamation marks to add a bit of emotion or to add some excitement to your writing. We've also got an apostrophe that has been used. So we've got this idiom, stone's throw. That means something that's not too far away. If it's a stone's throw away, then you could throw a stone that distance. It's not very far at all. And we've got a possessive apostrophe that has been used here. So a possessive apostrophe will be used when something either owns something else, so it's a possession, or it's closely associated with something else. So we're throwing the stone, it is the stone's throw. So make sure that you are using punctuation correctly and effectively within your answers. It's really important to ensure that the basics are down. So make sure that you've got capital letters, you're using full stops, commas and apostrophes correctly. If you can add any more interesting punctuation like question marks and exclamation marks, that's even better. Next, let's consider grammar and spelling. So when we're thinking about grammar, you want to read through your answers and make sure that they are accurate and that every single sentence makes sense on its own. So when you're doing practice answers, try and read out your answers out loud, or if you are in exam conditions, then try and imagine reading it in your head. So the grammar in this answer is super strong, and we know this because we've read through and every single sentence has made sense to us. So make sure that all of your nouns and verbs match up together. We also need to consider spelling. So you'll need to spell words correctly in your answers. And you need to try to include some trickier, more specialist words. So for example, we have opportunity, and we've got words like outstanding, official, and also rapidly and sprawling and landscape. So we've got loads of different words that might be slightly trickier to spell and words that are associated with the topic given in the question. So we were told to focus on an area or a town, and we've got words like landscape there, and we're talking about areas of outstanding natural beauty. So if you can include any specialist words to do with the topic, so long as you can spell them correctly, that would be fantastic. It's also a really great idea to check through your spelling after you have written your answer. Good spelling, punctuation and grammar, or SPAG for short, will help you to make sure that all of your writing makes sense and that everything is clear to the reader. You can also try to get a friend or a family member to read through a practice answer to make sure that they can make sense of everything that you're trying to write. We also need to consider how detailed our answers are and how long they are too. So it can be tricky to see how long your answer should be, but generally you will have word counts to base your answer around. Let's check if we've got a word count here. We haven't got a number of words mentioned, so what do we need to do? Well, you should try to aim to write between 3 and 5 paragraphs. So either 3 longer paragraphs or 4 or 5 shorter ones. This will help you to include enough detail and make it an appropriate length to answer the question. We also need to consider what details are being included, because all the details that you include should be relevant to the question, and you should cover all of the different aspects in the question. So what were we asked to do? Well, we were asked to enter a competition to write a persuasive article promoting a city, town, village or area in Britain. So we don't have a lot of details that have been provided for us to include here. So we've got to get creative and come up with our own ideas. We should probably discuss where the area is. So we've started by explaining that it's in East Devon, and we've explained that it is in an area of outstanding natural beauty. So the location has been explained in the answer, and this is really relevant to the question. We also have an explanation of what it looks like. So it is a lush green valley, and it's got a range of natural beauty. So we've got where it is, we've got what it looks like, and then we've got details about the history and culture of the place and the kinds of events that happen there. So try to think carefully about what you're being asked to do and what details you can include that are relevant to the question. Make sure that any details you're using are very appropriate and don't go off topic and start talking about anything else. It's more important to have good quality writing over quantity. Next, let's consider formatting and organisation. So you'll need to choose an appropriate range of organisational features that will make your writing clear, show the reader what text type you're writing, and break your writing up into sections too. So when we're considering formatting, what we want to be looking at is the text type, and hopefully we have a reminder of this here. So we've been told to write an article. What does this mean? Well, we need to include a heading for an article, and we will also want to be including subheadings to break up the text. We also want to use paragraphs no matter what text type we're writing, so every single answer should be broken up into paragraphs. It can be tricky to see where you need to start new paragraphs, but it's essentially whenever you bring up a new idea or start talking about a different topic. So we've got a bit of an introduction here, and then we go on to talk about the natural beauty in the area. And this entire paragraph is about that natural beauty and the location that it is in. So make sure that you divide your answer into sensible paragraphs. What we don't have here that could be included for an article is the author's name. We could also write this in an email format. So because we were given an email address to send the entries to, it could be helpful to include that and send the article as an email. So for that we would need the address that we're sending to, the address that we're sending from, and then a subject line, which would give a brief indication of what the email is going to be about. So for example, article for competition. So make sure that you are using relevant organisational features that match up with the text type given in the question. You could also use other organisational features in your answers to show the examiner that you know how to organise your writing really effectively. So for example, we could have used a bullet point list here to explain the different events that go on. Try to get creative and come up with an interesting way to format your answers. Formatting your answer carefully and using paragraphs will help you to achieve cohesion. So cohesion essentially means that everything is linked up and all your ideas are joined together in a logical way that flows really well. So you want your sentences to all flow on from each other and be linked together. So if we take a look at this third paragraph here, it says, furthermore, the history of Ottery is rich and long. So we know that we're addressing history here. It is the only town in the world to partake in the tradition of tar barrels, as well as the ever popular Pixie Day in summer. So here we are moving on from the history and saying that these are the traditions. These are historical traditions that the town still is involved with. So we've linked those two sentences together. In the next sentence, it's explained that young families, elderly people, professionals and tourists come from far and wide to enjoy these events, and they are not to be missed. So here we've linked to the previous paragraph by talking about these events, mentioning, referring back to the Pixie Day and the tar barrels. Finally, Ottery holds a fascinating culture, home to Coleridge, the renowned romantic poet, who was greatly inspired by the beautiful landscapes and culture of Ottery. So we're linking back to that first sentence there by talking about the history. We've got a bit about a poet that was alive in the Romantic period there. And then why not follow in his footsteps and give it a visit? So we're referring back to Coleridge, that poet there, and asking, well, why shouldn't the reader follow in his footsteps and go to the town? So can you see how each sentence is linked up within this paragraph, and the paragraph focuses on that one topic of historical and cultural interest? In order to achieve cohesion, you can also use connective words and phrases. So, for example, we've got due to that has been used here. Now, due to is used to give a bit of an explanation. So there's no town more deserving than this one to be published in a national newspaper. And then we've got due to explain why this is. So because of its landscape, culture and rich history. We've also got in addition that has been used in this paragraph. So that is a key phrase that shows that you're going to add on some information that is related to the previous sentences. So in addition, Dartmoor is only a stone's throw away. We've also got the word and used in the answer, and we've got as well as too. So we've got beautiful landscapes and culture. So this has just been used to add little bits of extra information, people, professionals and tourists. So we've got and being used at the end of lists here, so young families, elderly people, professionals and tourists, and to add some extra information. So not just inspired by the beautiful landscapes, but also the culture. So try to use some connective words in your own sentences to add information, contrast information or explain information using connective phrases like due to. As well as being cohesive, your answers will have to suit the purpose and audience given in the question. So the question focuses on persuading readers that a specific area in Britain should be visited. And this answer is focused on that throughout. We don't talk about anything else. We're just trying to persuade readers that they should visit this place, Ottery St Mary. It's also suited to the audience. So we're writing for a national newspaper and we've got a general audience of newspaper readers. So because it's a general audience, not a specific group of people, it attempts to persuade everybody. So we mentioned that young families, elderly people, professionals and tourists come from far and wide to enjoy these events. So it doesn't matter where you come from, you can come from far and wide and people still enjoy the events that go on. And there's a wide variety of categories of people that can enjoy them. So we've got this persuasive list of different people that have enjoyed visiting the town. So that really appeals to the general audience because it encourages absolutely everybody to visit. We've got a generally quite informal style to match up with this audience as well. So this makes the article seem a little bit more relaxed and conversational, which helps to persuade the reader to go visit this place. So we've got some idioms like stone's throw, which is quite informal language, and we've got some exclamations as well. And these create some interest and give the writing a more conversational tone. But because we're writing for a national newspaper, we also need to use some formal elements. So we've got standard English that is used throughout, and we've got an avoidance of using any slang words and contractions in general. So for example, we have it is rather than using the contraction it's, and this makes it just a little bit more formal. Finally, we are trying to persuade readers, so it has to be a really persuasive text. How are we going to do this? Well, we talked about the exclamation marks that sort of encourage the reader to be excited about the place. And we've got this rhetorical question, why not follow in his footsteps and give it a visit? And this encourages the reader to visit the area, asking them why on earth have they not visited yet? We've got positive adjectives that have been used to describe the place. So we've got, for example, lush green valley. It just makes it sound really nice and appealing. And then we have things like a rare thing. And this phrase encourages the reader by making it seem like a unique experience to enjoy this beautiful area. And it is an amazing opportunity. So the writer really clearly presents the idea that this town is not to be missed. Finally, we have some rule of three that's been used, so landscape, culture and rich history. And whenever we're using rule of three, this makes things more memorable to the reader. And we've got three positive things here that make the area seem like it's got a lot to offer. So try to include some persuasive techniques like these ones whenever you're trying to persuade your readers. And also make sure that your answers are consistently suited to the audience and purpose that were given in the question. Finally, let's think about whether this answer has any more long, sort of complex sentences. So we're thinking about compound sentences with multiple ideas contained within them. Why do we need these in our answers? Well, it will show the examiner that you can link up different ideas together and you can add some really interesting details. So, making connections between multiple pieces of ideas or information. So in this answer, we have, in fact, it is within the official area of outstanding natural beauty, a rare thing in a country with a rapidly sprawling urban landscape. So we've got that first start to the sentence saying, in fact, trying to persuade the reader that this is trying to back up opinions about Ottery St Mary with facts, saying that it's within this area of outstanding natural beauty, so it must be beautiful. And then we've added a comma here. And this shows that we're going to talk about something that is related to this, but slightly different. So it's not just within this area, but this is a rare thing in a country with a rapidly sprawling urban landscape. So whenever you can add some extra details using a comma or connective word, then try to do that and make your answers a little bit more well joined together, a little bit more cohesive. So altogether, there are a number of factors that are making this answer really, really outstanding. And this would achieve very high marks in the exam. It would be a definite pass and it might even get full marks. So we've considered the spelling, punctuation and grammar that help to make the answer really clear. We've also got a really effective answer to the question. So all of the details are relevant to the question and we've got all of the points in the question being addressed here. The answer all makes sense and it flows really effectively due to the use of paragraphs. And these paragraphs flow on from each other quite well as sentences flowing on from each other in a really cohesive way. We've got correct formatting for an article although more formatting and organisational features could have been used here. But the use of paragraphs overall is very effective. So now that you've had a look at this model answer, you can use it as inspiration to write your own answers, making sure that they are answering the question and they are appropriate for the audience and purpose throughout. Check your answers against the mark scheme to make sure that you haven't missed anything. And then perhaps hand your answers over to a friend or a family member if you're feeling brave enough, and they can see if your answer is good, if it has a clear meaning throughout, and whether you've got any spelling mistakes in there. So you can pause the recording if you want to do that now, or you can continue to watch question 2. So the second activity asks us to write a letter. You have recently entered a promotional competition for Visit Britain. This has made you think of some of the less attractive aspects of your city, town or village. Plan and write a letter to your local council about things that you are not happy with and why. You should include your own suggestions for improvements. One document has been provided. The document contains useful content for the activity, and you may choose to select and use any of the material for your writing. You may also use your own ideas to complete this activity, and you can make a plan in this box here. So we are referring back to the previous activity, which is quite rare in your exams. Generally, the two activities will be about completely different topics. But this time, instead of looking at the positives and trying to persuade the reader, we're looking at the less attractive aspects of the city, town or village. So we've got a different purpose here. And we're also writing for a different audience. So we're writing to the local council. So here we're making a complaint to the council, and we're writing in the text type of a letter. So the previous question asked us to write an article, and now we've got a different text type to consider. So make sure that you're familiar with using a variety of text types before your exam. And we're focusing on things that we're not happy with, and then we need to explain why. So, for example, are we unhappy with the number of bins in the village because this is leading to lots of people littering, and perhaps animals are getting caught in the litter, and young children are perhaps getting cut on broken glass. Anything really negative, and explain what effect it's having on the community, why it is a negative thing. And then we need to include our own suggestions for improvements. So in that example, our suggestion would be that the council should fund some more bins in the area. And we can also use the document once again to give us some inspiration and help us to plan our answer. So let's take a look at that document now. We've got lots of details here that you can use. So it says council contact information. Services. Your council provides a wide range of services. These include youth services, libraries, parks, open spaces and galleries, leisure facilities including swimming pools and recreation centres, refuse collection, street cleaning and other environmental issues, maintenance of roads and bridges, traffic management and road safety, parking services and control, disability accessibility access, economic development and regeneration, community development services, and housing, including the provision of social housing, housing strategy and advice and services for the homeless. Compliments, complaints and suggestions. We do our best to give you great services, but there is always room for improvement. Please tell us if you have something to say about any of our services. Please send your suggestions to Customer Service Centre, Council Offices, 23 High Street, Brighton. If you contact us by letter, we will try to respond fully within 7 working days. So we've been given loads of different things that we could talk about in our answer, and we definitely don't have to talk about all of these different things. That would be far too much detail. We wouldn't be able to do that within the time limits of the exam. So just pick a few ideas and think about how how these could be negative issues. So for example, are the libraries hardly ever open, or do they have very few books? And we need to use this address or make up our own address during the exam. So we're writing a letter here, so that is one example of an address that you could use. So now let's take a look at the example answer. So we have the things that we need for a letter included in here. We have the address and the name of the sender, and then we've got the date underneath that. And remember to pop these in the top right. And then we have the address of the recipient, so the person that is receiving the letter, and that needs to be aligned to the left and underneath the name and address of the sender and the date as well. But we'll come back to that when we get to formatting. For now, let's just read through the letter. So, dear Sir or Madam, I recently nominated my beloved town for an article supporting Visit Britain. However, it drew my attention to multiple areas within the town that require council attention and appear not to have been dealt with yet. Issues I have noticed within the town include litter dropping in public parks, increased potholes after poor weather, broken glass on streets near the school, and severe underfunding in the local libraries. While these are all important issues, to me at least, the most pressing is the potholes. They create unsafe driving conditions, especially as the weather gets darker and colder, and will only get worse if left unrepaired. Do you want to be responsible for a car accident this year? I propose immediate and intensive repairs to be made by the council with a start date sometime next week to prevent this urgent issue from getting any worse and putting lives at risk. Additionally, the other issues mentioned need immediate attention too. The broken glass near the school poses a safety risk to children. The litter in the park is visually horrific, and the lack of funding for the library severely limits the amount of people visiting the town. This further is of detriment to the community atmosphere we have, as it used to be a social gathering place. As there are multiple issues, I propose a council meeting very soon to properly discuss how to move forward and respond to these issues effectively, with the hope of making our town safer and more accessible for everyone. Yours faithfully, John Smith. So just like for the last activity, we're going to go through each of the marking criteria. And again, we will start with punctuation. So remember that you need capital letters at the start of each sentence and you need full stops at the end. And you'll also need capital letters for proper nouns, such as place names like Brighton, titles like Sir or Madam, and organisations like Visit Britain. So make sure that you know where to use capital letters and make sure that you are finishing each sentence with a full stop. You'll also need to make sure that you're using commas to add further detail to your sentences or to create lists. So we have a list created using commas here. We've got litter dropping in public parks, and then the next thing in the list, increased potholes after poor weather, and then broken glass on streets near the school. So remember that you'll need a comma for each part of the list until you get to the final one, in which case you can just use an and. We've also got a question mark that has been used to ask a persuasive rhetorical question. So we're trying to persuade the council that they need to make some changes. So we've asked, do you want to be responsible for a car accident this year? And we've appropriately used a question mark at the end of that question. We also have a semicolon. Now this is being used to join two related sentences together. So the other issues mentioned need immediate attention too, and then we've used a semicolon to talk about these issues. Now don't worry if you don't know how to use these, make sure that you're only using punctuation that you feel confident with, because if you use punctuation incorrectly, you might lose marks for that. but try your best to be as ambitious as you can with your punctuation and use a variety of punctuation correctly in your answers. So we've covered punctuation, and now we'll take a look at spelling and grammar. The grammar in this answer is really strong. We know this because we've read it through and all of the sentences made sense. You also need to think about the tense that you're using. So, for example, we have all of the verbs in this paragraph are in present continuous tense. So your verbs will have to be consistent. So we've got litter dropping. So that is present continuous because that is something that is happening at the moment. We've got that ing at the end. So because we've got that ing at the end there, we need some more ings if we're going to use verbs for the rest of the items in the list. So we got litter dropping in public parks, and then severe underfunding in the local libraries. So make sure that whenever you are using a specific tense, you are doing so consistently and correctly in your answers. Now let's think about the spelling. So remember that all of your spelling should be accurate. If you struggle with spelling, just try to get it as accurate as you possibly can and get lots and lots of practice in before your exam. And you want to try to include some trickier, more specialist words. So for example, in this answer, we have beloved, we've got attention, and we have require, which are all quite difficult words to spell. Quite sophisticated vocabulary there. Try to include any words that also focus on the specialist topic. So we are thinking about any potential issues in the local community. So we've got things like potholes being mentioned here. So just remember that your spelling, punctuation and grammar carry quite a heavy dose of the marks. Generally it will be just under half of the marks will be for your spelling, punctuation and grammar. And these are really important because they will help you to make sure that your writing makes sense and your meaning is really clear. So read through your answers really carefully when you've written them in the exam and make sure that everything is as correct as possible. Next, let's think about the detail and length in this answer. So have we got a word count to start with? Because if we do, we will need to be matching that. There's no word count that has been mentioned here. We haven't got any in the document either. So that means that we want to be trying to write about 3 to 5 paragraphs. Now this answer is a little bit long, but it's not tremendously long. It's got 6 paragraphs there, and some of them are quite short, so this will be okay. We've also got a range of details that have been used as well, and these details fully answer the question. So we've got a range of issues spoken about here. For example, we've got the litter dropping, the potholes, the broken glass, and the underfunding of the libraries. So there are some interesting details that have been included there, and we've used part of the document here when we're talking about the libraries and the parks as well, refuse collection, street cleaning, etc. Road safety too for the potholes there. So they've just selected a few from these bullet points given in the document here and given some details about the issues. We've also got a bit of an explanation. So if you go back to the question, you'll see that we need to talk about, not only mention the things that we're not happy with, but we need to explain why we're unhappy with these things. And then we need some suggestions for improvement. So do we have any explanations and suggestions? Well, yes, we do. We've explained that these are all important issues and we've explained why. So the potholes create unsafe driving conditions and will only get worse if they're unrepaired. So they could cause car accidents potentially. These are really great reasons why this issue needs addressing. And then we have a proposal. So they're explaining what they would like the council to do. They would like to have these immediate and intensive repairs made. So make sure that you're reading the question carefully and making sure that you are addressing all of the different aspects of the question in your answers. Including any irrelevant details that are not linked to the question could mean that your answer is unfocused and it might lose marks. So make sure that you're focusing on the question throughout. Think about any particular details that you can add and consider whether these details will help you to match with the audience and purpose set out in this question. So to add detail, you can either add information or you can explain your ideas with reasons. It can be helpful to plan your answer in advance to make sure that you've got enough ideas to write about before you start, and make sure that you don't run out of ideas halfway through. So now we've looked at detail, let's consider formatting and organisation. So we need to choose an appropriate range of organisational features for the text type, and we have been asked to write a letter. So just to remind you, you will need the name and address of the sender, and this needs to be in the top right corner. We then need the date underneath. So you can make up a name and address, you don't want to be giving any personal details away during the exam. We also need the address of the person that we're writing to. In this case, we don't have their name because we're not sure what their name is, so we're just writing to the customer service centre. Often you'll be given a name and address in the question or the document, so look out for that. After we've got the addresses and names down as well as the date, we will need a polite greeting. So here we've used dear sir or madam. Now this is a standard greeting when you don't know the name of the person that you're writing to. And then we have a range of paragraphs, and finally we've got a sign off here. So yours faithfully and then the name, John Smith. So make sure that you are, when you're writing your polite sign off, that you're matching it up with the person that you are addressing the letter to. So here we've used yours faithfully because we don't know the name of the person we're writing to. If you did know their name, then you would use yours sincerely. So just try to remember that little difference there and try to memorise the kind of layout that you will need when you're writing a letter. Now you could use a wider variety of organisational features in your answer. So for example, we could have used bullet points to list the various issues in the town in a clearer format. We could also use a numbered list to do that. But it's really important overall that we're using paragraphs to make sure that the answer is clearly structured. So new paragraphs for each new idea or topic. And we want to be using paragraphs in quite a logical order. So we've got the first paragraph which explains what the letter will be about and introduces the issues in the town. Then the second paragraph goes into more details about what the issues are and suggests which issue is the most important. Then the third paragraph goes into more detail about that more important issue, explaining what they would like the council to do about the potholes. So we've got a bit of an explanation of not only the effects that the potholes are having, but also what the council should do about them. Then we return to some previously mentioned issues and explain the negative impact that these are having on the community. And then finally, we've got a suggestion of how the other issues might be resolved through a meeting of the council. So it's a really logical order with an introduction and a kind of conclusion about what the council should do. And we're flowing in a way that makes clear sense to the reader. So just try to make sure that you organise your answer, make sure you plan carefully so you know what each paragraph will be about and you know that you've ordered your paragraphs in a way that is reasonable and logical. So using paragraphs effectively and in a logical order will help you to make your answers cohesive. Remember that your sentences should also be linked together, and you should join ideas together within sentences using commas, other connective words and phrases as well. So, for example, we've got additionally that is being used here to add another bit of detail. And we've used that at the start of the paragraph to follow on from the previous paragraph in a really cohesive way. We've also got the word however, and this has been used to create a contrast. So they're saying that they love their town and they have nominated it in an article. However, so they are creating a contrast, saying that even though their town is fantastic, there are multiple issues that need addressing. We've also got the word and that has been used throughout the answer to add some additional information. So try to create connections between ideas using these connective words and phrases, and make sure that you use commas to link your sentences as well. Remember that when you're writing paragraphs, all of the sentences within the paragraph should focus on the same topic. Now let's move on to language and register. So remember that your writing has to have the right kind of tone and style to match up with the audience and the purpose. This answer is really well suited to the purpose of the text because it focuses on complaining about issues in the town and offering some ideas to resolve the problems as well. It's well suited to the audience, so it's correctly addressed to these council officers. And we don't know the name, so we've got that "Dear Sir, Madam" and "Yours faithfully" being used. We've also got a recognition that we are writing to the council within the text. So, for example, we've got "I propose a council meeting" and "I propose immediate and intensive repairs to be made by the council." So it's clear that they're writing to the council and trying to get them to take some action here. So it's focused on the audience throughout. Let's now think about the style of the text. So it needs to be written in a formal style. Why is this? Well, we are writing for a professional audience. The council is an official professional group. So it needs to be written in standard English throughout. And we don't have any use of slang or any contractions in the answer. So no can'ts, won'ts, don'ts. We are not using any of these contractions. Remember that whenever you're writing to complain, you should remain reasonably formal because you want to persuade the reader to take you seriously and actually address the issues. If you start attacking the reader or calling them evil and exaggerating the issues, then they're unlikely to be persuaded by your writing. So just think carefully about what you're trying to achieve. The tone of the writing is generally quite serious and urgent, so we're encouraging the council to act immediately. So, for example, we've got severe underfunding. So that word severe there is an adjective that is persuading the reader that these issues are really important, really serious. We've also got pressing, which again means an important, urgent issue, a really serious issue, and we've got important issues described here. So addressing the council, saying that these issues are really serious and something needs to be done as soon as possible. And then we've got the word immediate, which suggests that these issues should be tackled as soon as possible. And we've got very soon to highlight that as well. So make sure that your language is adapted to the purpose of the text. Think about how you can persuade the reader that any issues that you might be talking about are really important or urgent. And try to use some persuasive techniques in your writing as well. So one example of a really great persuasive technique here is, do you want to be responsible for a car accident this year? This rhetorical question includes direct address, so it's using that word you there to sort of accuse the council directly, to sort of say you are to blame for these issues, you might be responsible for this horrible thing for a car accident to happen, so you need to take action. And this is really effective in placing blame on the council and persuading them to act so that they are not responsible for any car accidents or any nasty things that might happen. Finally, let's think about how this student has linked ideas together within their text. So as we said for the last answer, you'll need to be using some longer sentences as well as short ones. So you need to connect your ideas together. And we've already looked at how we've used things like commas and connectives to join up ideas together within these within sentences. So, for example, we've got additionally, the other issues mentioned need immediate attention too. So we're saying that to add on to the previous paragraph, we need these other issues to be addressed. And then we've got that semicolon there to add some additional information to the sentence. So the broken glass near the school poses a safety risk to children. And then we've got a comma to add yet another idea to that sentence to link it to the other issues. So linking to the broken glass, we've also got litter in the park, which is visually horrific. So we're also describing the impact on the community. So we've got safety risks, we've got things that are visually horrific. And then we've got a connective word and to add even more information to this sentence. So, and the lack of funding for the library severely limits the amount of people visiting the town. So there we've got a bit of a fact and an opinion there. So the library is underfunded, that's a fact. And then the effect of this is it's severely limiting the amount of people that are visiting. So whenever you can draw your ideas together in a way that is clear for the reader, then you should do so. But make sure that your sentences aren't so long and complicated that they become difficult to read. So when we look at this answer as a whole, it is really fantastic. We've got ideas that are linked together really effectively, and we've used paragraphs to make it flow in a logical order. The answer has been really carefully planned out and formatting is correct. So we've got everything we need for a letter that has been used here, and everything's in the right order as well. We've also got an effective answer to the question because it is addressing all of the different points that were mentioned in that question. So we've got things that we're not happy with, explanations as to why, and then suggestions for improvements. All of those boxes have been ticked there. We've got correct spelling, punctuation and grammar, and this really helps to make the meaning of the answer very, very clear. And we've got a range of persuasive techniques that have been used throughout the answer as well to make it appropriate for the audience and purpose that has been specified in the question. The tone and style perfectly match up with that audience and purpose. So overall, this would achieve very high marks, possibly even full marks. And you should use it as inspiration to write your own answer. Now make sure that you're coming up with your own creative ideas, and once you've written your answer, check it through against the marking criteria to see how effective it is.